I want to talk to you about my friend Charlie Crawford. He's a 10-time NFR qualifier.
Charlie Crawford, time to just shake it out and win. Got it on him fast, set
there
up.
We are.
Here's a dead
nice
money
run.
lead. You betcha 3-8.
That's an absolute perfect run. Timing was perfect from the time the first swing is up. He's got the control. Charlie made it happen by being timed up with his horse with the steer, and being able to not just rope, but to pick that steer's head up without changing the momentum for the heeler at all.
We know his beautiful wife, Jackie, all three of their beautiful children, the founder of the Liberty and Loyalty Foundation, which this year will exceed $1 million raised for military and first responders. I've said it 1,000 times. Charlie, it's time to rope, nod and ride, whip and spur. I want to welcome you to the Charlie Crawford Podcast. Let's ride.
All right, we're on. What's up, Stewie?
Not much.
How you been, buddy?
I've been good.
Been good to see you again.
Yeah, me too.
Beautiful place.
Oh, thank you.
Really beautiful.
Thank you.
A lot of land out here.
Yeah, there it is. My granddad bought this place in 1956, and he owned right down the road where the state park is. Sold that for $100 an acre, and come down and bought this for $80. And so he did good. I tell everybody he did good.
That's real good.
Right here on the Paluxy River.
Yeah. Yeah, because it goes right through your place, correct?
Yeah, we got about 7,200 foot of river frontage here, and so that makes it nice.
Now, are you able to dip down in there for like irrigating your arena or anything like that? Or
I haven't tried it yet. It might be illegal. I don't know.
Is that illegal?
I don't know if it is or not, but I haven't tried it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been knocking out you knock out a lot of lessons here at the house throughout the year, and got some outside horses.
Yes. I keep 6 outside horses a month. That's all I keep. And most every day I get those ridden. Some days I don't, so they'll stay a little longer. But lessons have been good. Yeah.
The weather's been hard this year for an outdoor arena, huh?
It's been really challenging, but not going to complain about the rain because I know it's going to dry up soon enough. And so it does. It makes it a little challenging, but it is what it is for now.
Yeah. How many? You said you counted. I talked to you the other day. How many lessons was last year? You counted them up. It was a bunch, wasn't it?
I did about 600, a little over 600 lessons last year.
That's decent.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys, they just turn into be friends after a while, huh?
They
a lot
do.
of your repeats.
Yeah. They're first they come your customer, then they come your friend.
Yeah.
And they show up, and then it kind of makes it hard to want to charge them, but I still got to make a living.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've had a heck of a career. 11 consecutive NFRs. You won the average in 1993. Was that with Jackie Stevenson?
Jackie Stevenson, yes, sir.
And then won the George Strait back when it was in Kingsville?
In Kingsville with Wayne Fulmer.
And then the Survey and the BFI. And, I mean, you've had a heck of a career. You're in the Texas Rodeo Hall of Fame. Man, it was, was it a little bit of the 80s or mainly just the 90s?
Mainly the 90s.
And early 2000s.
I bought my permit in 89. My rookie year was 90. And Lanham Mangold cracked me out in the PRCA. And I was heeling for him. And I won the Rookie of the Year in the Texas Circuit heeling then. And then I roped with Joe Beaver the next year. And then the following year, I headed for Jeff Medlin in 92. Yeah.
Logan's dad.
Yeah. And then the 93, of course, it was just Jackie.
So how'd you get your start in 93 when you made it that year?
Well, it's funny. I didn't have anybody to head for. Everybody had seen me rope. They didn't want to rope with me. And so I heeled, actually, Odessa come around, and I heeled for Johnny Emmons. And I'd sold Rich a horse, a Stewie. And
oh, yeah, Rich Kelton. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Little sorrel horse.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Rich, I need to ride your horse at Odessa. Well, Johnny and I won the second round there. And so I won $1,000. And then Tyler Magnus didn't have anybody to rope with at Denver because Steve Priscilla forgot to buy his card in time. And so I got to rope with Tyler at Denver. And we went up there and we placed in the average. We probably won 3,000, 4,000 or something up there. And then, of course, Jackie Stevenson came to me and says, hey, I need you to rope with me at Houston if you would. And I know you got enough money to get in because it's going to be the first year that Houston had team roping.
Yeah. And that was 1993, right?
That was 93.
Yeah.
Yep. And I said, okay, I'll do that if you'll rope with me at the rest of the buildings. If you rope me at San Antonio, El Paso and those. He goes, let me talk to Cactus and see. And he said, what'd he say? He goes, yeah, heck yeah, you need to go rope. And so we did. And so the next thing we're the second team out of Houston. And Mike Booth and Brent Lockett were the first team. They make the short round at San Antonio. They get moved. Now Jackie and I are the first team out. I was the first man to rope 2 feet in the dome. The only bad thing, I started out heading.
Back in 3 loops?
Back in 3 loops.
Back in 3 loops.
I missed. Jackie pulled old Ronnie over and headed him. And I pulled old Zip around and held him.
Yeah, for a lot of guys nowadays, realizing the 3 loops, that's ain't, I mean, other than the high school rodeo, I think that's the only place you see it now.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah.
In the team roping.
Yeah. And so that horse that I was riding there at Houston, I bought from Shay Good. And we were going to school over at Stephenville and met Shay over there and stuff. And he said, this horse just got nerved. I need a place to turn him out. And this is in the spring. And I said, I got 50 acres out there. There's nothing there. Just go turn him out. So the horse had been there a couple of months. He goes, hey, my dad wants to sell that horse. And I said, what is he? I said, he's a pretty good head horse. I said, okay. What do you want for him? I said, I want $1,000. I said, okay. Can I pay him out? He says, what? Pay him out? I said, I'll give you $500 now and $500 when I see you again. I ain't got $1,000. I was out of school there. And so he says, all right, whatever. And I think it was Pecos or 4th of July. I gave him the other $500. And anyway, and I still hadn't ridden him. I had no idea what he was.
Okay.
He was just turned out my pasture.
Got it.
And I was just going off his word. And anyway, so I got back that fall and got him up, legging him up, and started riding him. And little Benny said, he does pretty good. And so Rich calls me and he says, hey, you need to come down here and stay with T and I for a month at Lano. I said, you sure about that? And he goes, yeah, I've already talked to T. It's all good. Get your stuff, get down here. And so I did.
What'd you go down there for?
Just to head steers
just
for Rich.
Go rope.
Rich wanted more turns.
Got it.
And so I went down there to rope. And so got down there and got to watching T. Every move he made, So, all right, that man walks out of his house with his right foot first. I step out of his house with my right foot first. And so we stayed down there that whole month. And T had to leave and go to the tripping finals. Rich said, you stay here and keep turning me steers because I was getting ready to go to Vegas. And I said, okay. And so T says, hey, ride Obey Mama while I'm gone. I'm like, no, I ain't doing it. He said, yeah, you are. All right, yes, sir. And so I did. And I was so nervous because then the tripping finals ended. And he drove straight from Lazy E to Guthrie down there. That was Sunday night. Monday morning was gone to Vegas. He never run a steer on that mare until the rodeo started in Vegas. And I was so nervous he was going to call. You must have messed his mare up, but I never got that call, so I guess it was okay.
He was a magician, man, with that rope. I loved watching T. One of the things that I loved studying on T was just how good he could weld that barrier and could do it on a lot of different horses. What I noticed was how good of a jockey he was back then, because I remember one time he got on my horse a couple times and a couple different ones, and every single time just weld the barrier back.
Yeah, it's like he'd ridden them every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was amazing like that. And so the rest of that year, actually, I buddied with T and Rich, and T rode my horse then. And I had a horse that Jack Stevenson had bought, and he just let me ride him at some rodeos, and I rode my bay horse that I got from Shay at some rodeos and stuff. So he rode my horse a little bit that year and helped us get around and stuff. So that was fun.
It was it would probably blow a lot of kids' minds too if they had to back to the 80s or even the 90s and what it was like rodeoing back then. Mm-hmm. What was some of the rigs like? When you guys got from one rodeo to the next, like how did you guys get there? Because flying really wasn't that popular, was it?
No, we didn't do hardly any flying.
You mainly drove.
We drove everywhere. And there wasn't living quarters trailers. We all had Capri campers and bumper pulls, well, most of us, And that's what I had. That's all I ever had the whole time I rodeoed. I never had a living quarters trailer.
Seemed like the Dodge trucks were the vehicles back then.
Yes, I had a Dodge. I had a single cab, 3/4 ton Dodge, Capri camper, bumper pull trailer. And that's what Jackie and I went in all year. Yeah.
Have the generator on the tongue of the bumper pull?
Actually, for a while, we had it on the top of the trailer.
Top of the trailer in the hay rack.
I caught too many shavings on fire, so moved it down below. Yeah. That happened more than once.
Because back then, the Dodge was the truck. The Ford's there now. You see you go to rodeo now, almost everybody's got a Ford.
Right.
And back then, the Dodges, those were the most reliable, strongest, toughest trucks back then, wasn't it? Everyone had a Dodge back then, huh?
Yeah. And so, Jackie and I, of course, we ended up making the finals that year, won the average together. And that horse that I bought for $1,000, I won at the rodeos. I won about $63,000 on him. And so it paid for him right there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so
that's a heck of a year back then.
Oh, it was. It was really good. There was only one other team that year at the NFR that won more money than Jackie and I, and that was Bobby Hurley. And that was the year he won 5 rounds.
All 5 rounds. And, yep, that's right, without Bach.
Yeah.
On a spiff.
Uh-huh.
That was a hell of a head horse.
That was.
That was one of the horses of that day. What was that horse like to ride?
He was awesome. He
had his tongue stuck out. It was almost like a D-ring snaffle he rode him in.
He rode just a little D-ring snaffle, scored like a rock, and just
strong.
He was good. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that horse. Bobby, there's a lot of horses I loved that he had. The yellow horses he had in the late 80s when you were over Dennis.
Smugs, yeah.
Those were cool horses.
They're cool.
He had some good horses in his day.
He did. Yeah.
So you won the George Strait as well in you said the late 80s?
No, 98.
Late 90s. And that was in Kingsland. What was it like in South Texas in July?
It's like you could imagine. Hot, humid.
I'm from the Northwest. I don't think I could imagine.
No, you couldn't. No, you couldn't. It was so hot. And everybody's just wringing wet.
Yeah.
I mean, then you'd ride in that little old building. That building was air conditioned, but there was only room for about 10 horses in there that you could get in there to cool off. And the box was, I bet it wasn't 14 foot long.
Oh, it was a tight, dead box.
Like
real dead.
Right in front of you, yes. And they had the old cage, and they had the wands that the steer tripped.
Yeah, I remember those.
And you just stood right there. Your horse had to score.
Yeah.
And I was riding Old Peppy, which you know.
Oh, Led Peplin. Yeah.
Led Peplin. Then come from Wayne Shaw.
I love that horse.
Yeah.
That horse taught me how to win.
Yeah.
I loved him.
Winner.
I loved him.
Yeah.
Then you won it on him.
Won it on him.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That was cool. Yeah, I forgot about those days.
Yeah, it was neat.
And then, did you ever make it when there was 15 headers and heelers? Because in the team open, for a lot of guys that don't know the history of it, sometimes when you made the NFR, I forget what year they started splitting it, but it used to be all together.
It was 95, I believe.
Was when they finally
split it. Had the header, world champion healer. Yeah.
And so back in the 93 when you made it, how did you qualify in the team open? Because it's different than what it is now. There's header and heeler.
Right.
Back then they're all together, right?
Yes.
So how did it work?
Well, everybody paired up, and they got down till they had 15 teams. But you could pick somebody up if you were in the top 15. You could pick somebody up that was 45th, and that some guys did that. The guys that roped really good out there, they didn't rodeo real hard because they knew somebody would pick them up, and then that would usually drop somebody else out.
And there's probably some people getting paid.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention any names.
But it was a thing. If I remember right.
It happened several times. Yeah, guys pay guys to take them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there are guys getting paid $25,000, $35,000, and
because if say you and Jackie Stevenson rope together all year, you guys make the final. You're in the top 15. Mm-hmm. Then the guys basically where it gets tricky is the guys that made it and their partner didn't.
Yes.
Correct. That's when it got tricky, right?
Right. Yeah. And so like Jackie, if we got there and if we wanted to, we could have picked different partners.
Yeah.
And that's going to drop somebody else down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What a dysfunctional way to have it.
It was.
So frustrating.
It was.
Because I was such a fan when I was growing up of Mike Fuller and Shane Crosley, Troy Frazier, and those guys were the guys up there.
Right.
And
they won everything.
Yeah. And all 4 of those guys would have made the NFR if it wasn't for how it was ran. If it was 15 headers and 15 heelers back then, all those guys had NFR numbers, back numbers.
Right. Yep.
That was hard for a lot of us. It was rooting for them. It was like, gosh, dang it. Yeah. I wish that thing would have always been correct.
Right. It wasn't fair.
It wasn't fair at all.
And now the way they got it's great. Wow.
Yeah. Yes, it's even.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. The different era though, wasn't it? It was crazy back then, huh?
It was.
What was it like entering back then? This is what I always tell everyone, like, you know, for these young Thundercats that got a cell phone and apps and all this stuff and computers, like this was what it was like rodeoing back before the internet and cell phones in a way.
Yeah, oh yeah. There was no cell phones then. And so that's one thing Lanham taught me the business side of rodeoing really well. I mean, we took care of business, but you had the journal out, the sports news out, reading it, finding which rodeos closed, which day, trying to figure out your run. And so when you had your Rand McNally out,
yep.
A lot of kids don't even know what Rand McNally is. And
it's your laminated map.
Yes.
And if you couldn't afford a laminator, you got a paper
one. I had the paper one.
Yeah.
And
I remember when I finally hit the big time when I got my first laminated map.
right.
I was excited.
Yeah.
You can spill coffee on it all you want. It didn't matter.
Yeah. And then you had to, when the books closed at say noon, there was a 30-minute grace period. So you could call and change your preference when you wanted to go. And so you had to make sure you were by a payphone between 12 and 12:30. So if you're out traveling, all right, we can't get there by 12:30. We got to wait here in this town until the grace period, because it might be an hour in between towns. And you didn't want to not check on the rodeo. That was part of business. You had to check. Sammy was asking for that performance you wanted. And if you wanted to change it, if you wanted to take the chance or not, and so.
And then trades. How handy was that to be able to have to call people and leave messages on trade on a payphone as you're trying to get to another rodeo?
So, yeah. Then
how many quarters did you guys have stacked in your freaking Dodge?
Yeah, exactly. Rolls.
Yeah. For the guys that don't know, back in them days, payphones, you had to change.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was a young kid, we just stacked them quarters up in that little console right there because that was for phone calls home or trades or whatever.
Well, then the handy part was having to call Procom and get everybody's number. They'd give you the whole list, and there may be 40 guys in the Slack you're trying to get traded or whatever, and they'd have to read them out to you and write them down.
And there was only so many people at Procom, so the amount of times you call in, it was busy.
Oh, yeah.
Busy
all the time.
Busy, yeah. Yes. That was the one phone number back in the day, 1-800-234-7722. Yeah.
I still remember that.
Yeah, because the amount of times we would have to dial it, especially if you had to, like the old turn one, return, and then diddling, turn, diddling. But yeah, you could learn a phone number back then.
Yeah. Oh, you remembered everybody's number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was a different day, wasn't it?
Different.
Everything was so much slower.
Yep.
Yeah, and then just the amount of rodeos. I mean, there wasn't like you guys had a whole lot of. I guess the 90s they started getting more rodeos. And what year was it when team roping finally became a standard event?
Oh, I'm not sure. At the NFR?
Well, I think like when all the rodeos started to have it, maybe it was like 2000s.
Yeah, it was in the 2000s.
Early 2000s, something like that.
Because last year I went to the NFR was 2003. And so, team roping wasn't mandatory. We'd finally got equal money at the NFR, but.
Because what was in the 70s, if I remember right, it was like maybe some of the 80s as well. It was like a quarter of the money, right?
Yes.
And then it was half.
Yeah.
And then finally, at the NFR, they finally started getting equal money. But how did that happen? Because it wasn't voted in, right?
It was not. No.
How did they finally get equal money in the team roping back in the day?
Well, so we had a meeting on that Wednesday, I believe, before the rodeo started, a contestants meeting. And we had been talking to the other events about trying to get us equal money for the team ropers and barrel racers. And so in that meeting, Matt Tyler stood up and our spokesman, he says, "Hey, we're tired of it. We want equal money." And the look on those guys' eyes were like, "What? What do you mean? No, we want equal money, or we'll not be competing tomorrow night." And like, well, no, you got to. No, we don't have to. We're going to strike because we're tired of not having equal money. And anyway, they said, we can't add it. Oh, we can't rope then. And so everybody was pretty much behind us. And
that was one of the first times I think all the events were with each other. They were on the same page.
They were.
Which is something in history because that
don't happen.
Anybody who's rodeoing very often, they know that you're not going to get that many egos to all be on the same page. And so that was a heck of a feat in history.
It was.
What year was that?
97.
97.
And so there was a couple of bull riders that stood up. So we're going to ride. Steve Duhan stood up.
Oh, you had Steve. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And he looked over there and he says, "Boys, y'all either going to turn out or doctor's release, whichever one you want."
I love it. I love the Bulldoggers, man. They're the greatest dudes, greatest guys in the world. Yeah, you have Steve Duhan on your team, you're good.
Yep.
You're good. I love that guy.
He's a good one.
Yeah, man, that guy's stories back in the day. He was a phenomenal guy, man. And you believed it when he said that.
Oh, yeah.
When he said you got two options, you can either, I remember Rod Lyman told me one time when I was trying to get a trade from somebody, and it was one of those trades to where it was kind of like, come on, like there's one thing to ask for a trade, when you didn't need it. But there was another one that was obvious that you needed it, another one obvious that he could.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, if I was using the Bulldog, and we give them guys 2 options. You can either trade or doctor's release.
Yeah. Same, yeah.
I love that saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the writing the names down and trying to call, and it was a heck of a time back then. But I tell you what was so much different was just being able to talk to and remembering what it was like back then to rodeo without an internet. You actually had to be sociable.
Right.
Playing cards, driving down the road, and and back then rodeoing was pretty fun. There was a lot of beer tents. It seemed like it seemed like we were always able to believe it or not, we went to more rodeos, but there's also more time to actually get to go hang out with your buddies.
Oh yeah, we did that a lot. It was a blast. When I rodeoed, there was a bunch of good guys. We had fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it started getting back to back, which is crazy, it actually started getting to where you didn't see your buddies as much. Because back then all the slacks were kind of all the same. So you kind of created a bond because all the contestants all roped at the same time. So even the calf roping or bulldog, and you got to see your buddies all the time.
Right.
To where then when it got back to back, you may not see somebody for a month.
Right. It's good.
Which is still good. The back to back's good, but it was just a different time.
Right.
Back then where a guy had more time to.
It made it easier on the traveling. Back to back did.
Yeah.
But like I said, you didn't get to hang out with your buddies and as much. But
yeah, it was a cool time because I remember it. How many was it? Did you rodeo on the unlimited days?
No, there was 100.
100.
Yeah, when I rodeoed. Well, then they changed it 1 or 2 years there. They limited it to 75 and this and that. But most years, there was only 1 year that I think I went to. No, there was a couple of years I went to 100, but most I got close. I was in the 90s every year.
How many miles back then did you put on a rig?
I'm going to say probably close to 75, 80,000.
That's what I always thought. 75 to 100,000 miles on a vehicle.
Yeah.
And not counting probably the other vehicles you probably got in.
Right, yeah.
And I remember a guy could get pretty exhausted out there driving because, like I said, it wasn't like you flew to a whole lot of them. Most of it was on the asphalt.
Almost everywhere.
So it could get so tiring that a guy could even fall asleep at a traffic light.
That could happen. That sure could happen.
So how did that happen besides 100 rodeos?
I don't really know. I was just tired, I guess. Couldn't stay awake. But my buddy that was with me, Chris Lawson, he was asleep too. We was both asleep.
Lucky.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So
I just talked to some of your friends, and they told me about the time you fell asleep at a traffic light.
Right. Well, then we're following Joe Day, and he turns around and he's knocking on my window. I'm at the loud. What do you need? I'm sleeping. Leave me alone. Anyway, well, you're asleep. Anyway, so he woke me up, and away we went. And we got a big gulp and kept going.
Yeah, and that was back before Red Bull. I mean, you had to toughen up on Vivarin and coffee.
Oh, yeah. I know.
If you wanted to do it naturally.
The Vivarin would keep you awake because it make you sick.
Oh, it'd make me so stomach sick.
I tried that one time. I was like, I'm good.
Yeah, I'd almost rather die. Yeah. It felt like it was death, but it was just awake living it.
Well, then I did fall asleep. The first year Martin, Sarah and I roped together, we're headed to Denver. And he always wanted to leave pretty much last minute. That was kind of the way he's always been. And so we're not running late. We got time to get there. And so I get north of Trinidad, almost to Aguilar, and I start driving at Raton. So I hadn't been behind the wheel very long. And I get up there and I doze off and I start going off. And it's about 5:36 in the morning. The sun's kind of coming. You can kind of see where I'm headed. I said, I'm just headed down this little embankment because out of the mountains, thank God. And I said, I'll just go through that fence and turn around. I can pull back out, right? I get about halfway down that embankment and where the snow had melted and the mud and just jackknifed my rig. Martin hit the floorboard hollering, shit, what's happening? Anyway, and we're looking our horses in the eyes. Didn't hurt any horses, didn't hurt the trailer, but it did crunch the cab. And so all week at Denver, we both had to get out the passenger side. the driver's door wouldn't open.
That was like Dukes of Hazzard, but just they had one door left.
Was that one door? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the times. Man, as a teenager too, I used to fall asleep all the time. I remember when I was a kid, my dad he had me. He wanted to make sure I was knew how to work, so he got me a job packing hod, which was a packing and laying bricks for a bricklayer and stuff. And that was my job during the summer, during the week, and then on weekends I'd go to some amateur rodeos. Well, you get done laying brick and then you practice at night, then get up and go to work in the next day. Well, then you're going all night rodeos and stuff like that, and amateur rodeo. And man, I'm telling you, the amount of times that it was hard to stay awake for me. And I was a young kid still growing and kind of a low oil temperature anyway. And so it was easy for me to fall asleep all the time. But
I didn't even have to be tired though. I mean,
just fall asleep.
10 o'clock, I'm going to go to sleep.
Right.
I've been like that way my whole life.
Yeah.
I pull over and Jackie's team, he's going to make me drive. He goes, no, you need to learn to drive at night. And so he's laying in the boot of the camper in that single cab truck watching me. And I'm tired. And I pull over to a rest area in between two semis, put the emergency brake on, kick back. I'm going to take a nap. And I wake up and I don't realize where I'm at. There's a truck beside me and I hit the brakes and grab the wheel. And I'm like, oh. And he's just back there just laughing his butt off at me.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was rodeoing, I would just start seeing stuff. When I would start seeing stuff like, all right, it's getting close now. Cause I had fallen asleep and hit the rumble strips and the gravel. And that's at least, luckily that was all I ever, that's as far as I got, but like, man, the hallucinations that I'd start having, you go down that desert down there in Burns, Oregon, and the sagebrush would blow in front of the reflectors and I would start hallucinating like I was falling asleep and there would be sheep with mining helmets. And I'm like, man, I need to find some more coffee again. Because back then, coffee and Mountain Dew was like the strongest caffeine. It wouldn't take long for it's only so many Mountain Dews you can drink for. It's same, almost like Viagra, and your stomach started hurting. Well, then when I remember there's one time I started seeing pink polka dotted elephants. And that's that one time that I hit that was the last thing I remember seeing before I hit the gravel. Oh, and I'm like, all right, if I start seeing those things, then that's when it's time to pull over. But yeah, guys falling asleep driving back in the day, that was. I remember driving with Mike Beers for a little while, and I think him and Matt Tyler had gotten a wreck, right? And I remember Mike Beers I drove for him a little bit, and then he had a few other guys drive for him. And I remember he was telling me a story about this one kid that he had driving for him. And he said, look, if I wake up and I go to grab the wheel, he said, just hit me. He said because he'd take a nap driving, but then he would have flashbacks of getting in that wreck. Oh. And he said, when I went to sleep, this kid was just terrified. He said, I could tell like this kid was like, had one eye on me and one eye on the road. Right. And he said, he wakes up just real abrupt. He said he does it all the time. But he said he woke up from a nap. He's like, where are we at? Where are we at? And the kid's just wound back right there with a fist going, I'll hit you, man. Don't move or I'll hit you.
Well, Mike, he would talk in his sleep too.
I remember that too.
So I rode up with him that one winter, and we were driving across there, and he'd be back there just talking. Of course, I'd start asking him these questions all the time just to mess with him.
Yeah, it's amazing what a guy went through back then, and just the sleep deprivation, and how dangerous it was in one perspective. But remember the boots? You could crawl back and forth from the front of the truck to the camper.
I had one in every camper.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah. That was handy.
It was.
Yeah, a guy could kind of keep moving back then.
Yep.
And then, so what about some of the horses you had? You had some good head horses back in the day.
I did. I've been pretty fortunate to have some good horses. Probably the one I rode the longest was the roan horse that I got from Monroe Tomlinson. And Monroe, he wanted me to come try this horse. And I'm like, yeah, everybody tells you they got a good one, right?
Yeah.
Come try them. And so I said, hey, I'll get back in the finals, I will. Well, he runs into Martin in January sometime. End of January, he goes, hey, when are y'all roping next? Martin tells him. He just shows up. He don't even call me. He just shows up with him, unloads him. Hey, here's a horse. Anyway, so I run about 5 steers on him. He rears out of the box. Monroe goes, I don't know what's wrong with that horse. That ain't that horse. You leave him here tonight. I'm going to leave him here tonight. You ride him in the morning. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Don't you dare rope on him until I get back. And Monroe, he was hilarious. You didn't have to wonder what he's thinking. And the cool thing about Monroe was that he made the first NFR in 1959 in the calf roping, and he went to the steer roping finals too. But anyway, so he leaves. Well, I tried that horse 4 days in a row. 4 days in a row, he rears up out of the box on about the 5th or 6th steer. An old barrel racing wife over there, Ember, she's like, he's sore in his hocks. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. And you need to buy him. I said, well, honey, he rears up. She goes, has he ever reared up on the first one? I'm like, no. How many run at the rodeos? Well, 1. Looks to me like you need to buy him. Good. And he's still a little green and stuff. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I took him to a roping, rode him down there, and gave him a little butte. So he was good. Never did. So I bought him, took him to Dr. Howe. He took him out a big old spur on his hocks. I think I can keep him going. He injected him. He never reared up again. About every 6 months, we'd have to go back and inject him again, but he was good. He lasted me a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I could ride him anywhere. The BFI or the NFR. It didn't matter. Yeah. Then I had a little sorrel bald-faced horse, Scooter.
Yep, I remember him.
Yeah, I rode him quite a bit that I'd bought from Ken Bray. Yeah, he was good and easy. But
I remembered some of the longevity you had in some of your head horses, and then just like the longevity you had also with your partners. Like you and Martin roped for a long time. How long did you and Martin Lucero rope?
He put up with me for 8 years. He's tough.
And he was that way too. He had, he had long-lasting partnerships. Like him and Luke, they roped together a long time, and he was a loyal dude.
Yeah,
he was one of them guys that I always respected. On, he didn't get high, didn't get low, and he just
pretty even killed.
Yeah,
yeah.
There's a lot to learn from Martin just on his on how to be a partner in a way, wasn't it?
No, he was a good partner. He was so easy to get along with, and it made our partnership work. And so one of the first big rodeos we had a chance to win, I think he roped a leg, and he comes up there and says, "Man, I'm sorry." I looked at him and said, "Did you do it on purpose?" He looked at me, "Well, no, I didn't do it on purpose." I said, "No use to apologizing. We're both trying." And from then on, we knew each other was trying. We're no use to apologizing. We both had the same work ethic, same goals. So that's why I think we lasted as long as we did.
Because that's very uncharacteristic, even back then and even nowadays, to be able to rope that long.
Right. And then, if we missed 5 in a row, we weren't looking for a new partner. And the other guy knew that.
There's a lot to that.
Yeah, there is. And so many people, I crack up, they go to the winter rodeos. And what do you go to? 5 rodeos during the winter, roughly? And don't do good. Well, we got to change partner. We're not winning nothing. Well, no. It's only been 5 rodeos. You're going to run 5 steers in less than a week here, and then the summer starts. Give it a chance to work. No.
Is that a lot of just those couple of conversations? That was all that needed, and you guys just knew you were on the same page. That was kind of one of the things that made it last that long.
I think so. Yeah, because we weren't worried. We roped together that first year, and then he wanted to rope with somebody else the next year. And I said, "Oh, that's fine." And so we missed 1 year there, and about halfway through that year, getting towards August or whatever, we talked, and he wanted to rope again the next year. I said, "You bet, I'm all about it." And that's what I was roping with Tom Bourne then, and I told Tom then, I said, "Hey, Martin, I'm going to start roping again next year." He says, "Man, that's fine."
Is that when you and Tom made it at the Cow Palace?
Yeah.
Because that was back in the day, like that was the rodeo. Everyone knew the Cow Palace was.
Yes.
That's where that's where the nut cutting came in right there, wasn't it?
And
that was the last rodeo of the season. That's when everyone's sweating bullets, huh?
And I was that guy sweating bullets.
I remember you were in the sports news in the picture right there, calling home from the payphone when you made it from the Cow Palace with Tom Bourne. We
started off that week. I think I was 17th. I was 5,000 out, and I had 3 rodeos left. Tom had 4. We left the U.S. finals. We drove to Del Rio. And I was buddied with Jay Wadhams and J.D. Yates. And we drove to Del Rio, no good on the first one, to come back and won the second round, won $1,000. So now I'm down to, I got to win 4,000. Drove to the Cow Palace, run our first one, was 6 on our first one, no money. And left there and drove to Pasco, run 2 steers up there.
Up in the Northwest, up there in Washington.
Yeah. Yep. Drove up there, run 2 steers, no good on either one of them. So now all I have left is my second steer at the Cow Palace. We got to go to Casper, Wyoming, because it counts for him. And so we fly over there. I borrow Randy Polich's horse, and Nick Charchet, I think, is who Tom rode, was 4-8. We won it. So that he was in then. That give him enough. So then we go back to Denver, get on the plane. We're sitting there, and it's delayed. I said,
and this is before the short round or for your second round?
Before the second one. I hadn't run my second one.
Yeah, that's a nightmare.
And so we scheduled had plenty of time, but then there was a couple hours for the next one to get out. And there was one that was fixing to leave when I was boarding that one. I look out the window and it hadn't left yet. And so I stood up and told Tom, "Let's go." "What are you doing?" "We can't get off." I said, "So we can get your rope bag. Let's go." And so I'm walking down the hill, and the stewardess, she said, "Sir, you can't get off." I said, "Yes, ma'am. You don't understand. I'm getting off this plane. I've got to get off this plane." "Well, you can't. We've already boarded." I said, ma'am, excuse me. And I politely moved her to the side. Today I would have been thrown in jail, but I wasn't rude to her. I stepped by her and we ran to that next gate, and they're fisting to close the doors. I'm hollering, hey, wait. They said we could get on this plane. And that guy's like, cool, come on. He was really cool. And so we ran and got on the plane. And Tom's like, I can't believe we just did that. And so we get there and we make it. When we get over there to San Francisco, run our second one that night. We're 4-6 or something at the time.
That'd be good money.
We won the round.
Set
the arena record at the time, I think. And
what was that worth?
Oh,
would that have been 1,600 probably back then?
Probably
1,800,
so.
Maybe.
Because I still had to win 42 or $4,000.
Yeah. So you're almost splitting it in half.
Yeah. So I won the second round, and now we're high call, and we got to be 5-something, 5-9, I think, or 6 flat. And we had to win second the short round and win the average. Then I'll make the finals. Easy enough. We were 5-7. We won second the short round and won the average and made it by $200. Yeah.
You had to be 5'8" and you're 5'7". Is that right?
5'8", 5'9", something like that. Yeah. And 5'7", yeah.
That was right there, wasn't it?
Right there. Yeah. And so that was an exciting finish.
It is fun when a guy can photo finish that. I've done it one time, and I for stress level, I was glad that we could kind of leave it at 1. But
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's all there. It's still fun. Those are great stories. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of one of them when you get done with it, you're like, man, that's something you'll always be able to remember. You'll never forget those when you had to battle from behind.
No, you don't forget. I remember making those runs like they were yesterday.
So when say you had to be 5'8" and 5'7", like, what was the stress like? What was it like? What were you focused on? How did you overcome it to be able to go make your guys' run back then? What was your focus?
I just was worried about the start. And after that, it seemed like it was, just go catch is all it was. It wasn't not like we had to be 3. I mean, like it is today. You had to be 5. And if you got a good start, then it was right there, and, it was fairly easy. And I feel like I was always pretty fundamentally sound. Mm-hmm. I tried not to make mistakes. And so, I hear all the people talk about the mental part of it. I don't feel like I struggled with that part of it, just because I feel like my fundamentals were so strong there. Mm-hmm. And, I just knew I'd just score good, go make my run.
That was an era too where guys hit the start and use their horse.
Yes.
Where there's so much now where it's hit the start or float to the start and use your rope.
Yeah.
Where even almost nowadays, almost a real good head horse will almost get in your way if it's too strong.
Right.
It seemed like back then, guys were always trying to find that horse could score and run.
Yeah.
He needed that speed. Well, now if they run too hard, they'll almost outrun your rope.
Right.
So it's a different time now, isn't it?
It is different. I get to watch a lot on TV now because of the Cowboy Channel. I get to see a lot, and it is different, way different.
Yeah, different rope height, different loops, different. Yeah, watching. I think that run that I seen the other day that Dustin Esquiza made it, maybe somewhere in Nebraska. Was it North Flat?
I think it might.
Yeah, in the rain.
Yeah. Oh yeah, rain. Yeah, I saw
and
that.
Just hit the line tight, turn, first top, done.
Yeah.
It's like, golly. Just amazing.
Crazy.
It's amazing how good.
Yeah, you give him a little bit of room, enough arena, and golly.
It's crazy how much stronger he gets with the more room he gets.
Yeah.
That performance that he had this year at the Lone Star Shootout was, I think he was 3 on the first one, 4 flat on the second one, and 3.8 or 3.7 on the short round.
It's nuts.
Like you can't. I mean, that's yours. You have it.
I've never been 3 in my life.
It's so wild.
I've been 4-1. I think 4 flat, 4-1, the fastest I've ever been. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I don't feel like I'm going to be 3 anytime soon.
Well, you did such a good job. Your horses were good. You rode your horses good. Like, let's say your fundamentals were always good. You and Martin's consistency was you guys were some of the guys. You guys were some of the teams that everyone watched on. This is going to be, you better watch out for the average because they're going to kick your ass. Right. Like Iceman back in the day on Top Gun. Screw up and do something stupid, and you guys were going to have them.
Right.
and how good you rode your horses. And so the horsemanship now has kind of led you almost to now of what you are able to do now on the judging all the rope horse fraternities.
Right.
So you've been one of the main guys on the rope horse fraternities on the judging side, and you've got to judge how many different fraternities now do they have you judging?
I've gone to 4 different ones now,
What all ones are there?
and well, there's
The ones you've gone to.
the Royal Crown, the American Rope Horse, the Gold Buckle, and the Texas Best. Yeah. And this wasn't a deal that I was trying to get into. Jay Wadhams called me when he first started his deal, and he says, Kevin, I want you to come judge. Jay, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do it. Next year, he'd call me. Jay,
How come you didn't want to do it?
the pressure of messing up. I don't want to mess up. And because I realize how much time, effort, and money that these people have in these horses. I don't want to be the guy that causes them. And I don't care who's riding them. I want to judge the horse.
Mhm.
I don't judge the roper. And I've been real adamant about that. I don't care who it is. And that's because of the one thing I didn't go to the AQHA shows because it's so political.
Yeah.
And those guys will tell you it is. And so, and I said, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm judging the horse. I don't care if it's Charlie riding him or if it's Joe Blow. I'm judging the horse, and I stay focused on the horse the whole entire run, watching his feet, watching his head, way everything's moving. And but anyway, Jay just kept after me, and finally he called me a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago. He goes, "Hey Kevin, I'm not calling you to ask you to come judge one of my shows. I'm telling you, you're gonna judge my show." And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." I finally give in. And I just told Matt Zancanella 2 weeks before that I couldn't come do his because I'd been telling Jay no for all these years.
Because Jay, he has American Rope Horse Futurity, Jay
Yes,
Wadhams. And
yes.
then Matt Zancanella, he does the Royal Crown.
Royal Crown, right. And so then after I told Jay yes, I called Zank up. I said, "Hey, I guess I can come do yours now if you still want me to." He goes, "Yeah, I'd love for you to." Anyway, so, and I judged one other one. Oh, golly, it had to be 10 years ago, I'm guessing in Canada with John Miller. I'd went up there and done that one. And
he had asked me a couple of times, and I declined in the fact of, I'm like, man, the rope horse fraternity is one of the few places I still got friends. You know what I mean? Like not one of the few places, but I mean, like, these guys are my friends.
Right.
Gosh dang, I don't want to lose those as my friends. And that's what it kind of felt like, was like, gosh dang, if I'm now I want to be a judge. I don't want to be a judge. I still want to be, when I show up, this is my outlet.
Yeah.
I want to come hang out and spar with these guys a little bit, see where my horsemanship is. But then, I don't, but they are, it's not that way, is it?
No, it's not, and I don't feel like that they try to treat me that way. I feel like I do a good job. I try to,
I think it's credits you how many of them are calling you, and how good of a job you're doing.
Yeah. I said, I try. Like I said, I was nervous after I did the first one down there for Zank. Trevor was there, and he says, "Kevin, how was it?" Man, it feels like I need some GastroGuard. I got ulcers right now. I ain't kidding. Oh man, I was nervous. Like I said, anyway. So no, it worked out good.
So how many fraternities are there? Because I don't feel like it's getting saturated, but there's a lot of them now, isn't there?
It seems like there's getting to be a lot.
Do you know how many there are now? You said the Texas Best. That one's I'm not quite too familiar. Who owns that one?
Clay Burnham does that one.
Clay Burnham.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing they're just here in Texas.
Yes.
And then the Royal Crown, that's Matt Zancanella's, and there's a bunch of money in that one.
Uh-huh.
And then Jay's.
Yes.
And I've gone to quite a few of those. Those are the only ones I know. So I've been to Jay's because he's kind of one of the first ones that started.
Right.
And I love what Jay's trying to do.
Yes.
And then now Caleb Drigger's just started one, the Gold Buckle.
Yes, I went and did his the end of December. Yeah.
And so what does his kind of consist of? Because I was trying to figure out which ones, because like if there's this many fraternities, it got to be doing something different.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And
otherwise, they're just doing the same thing.
As far as the money and stuff, I think, I don't know who adds the most or does all that. The things that like Driggers did different at his, he had 4 judges there judging, and they threw out the high and the low. So if a guy did miss something, and the roper's not penalized. And I'll tell you one thing about judging, it depends on where you're sitting to what you see. And that's the biggest thing I've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The angles that you're getting.
What all angles do you feel like have you been, and what all angles do you feel like, or how many judges do you feel like you need in angles? So like where are you guys at? Where do you judge from? And where do you think you see the most at it? At what angle?
I like sitting there where the flagger is, really, when they'll put a judge's stand out there close to, by the head box, but down the arena just a little bit. You can see the run of the horse. You can see him really good in the box. You can see the run and the rate, the set and the handle, and the finish in the face. You can see it all the best right there, I feel like. Yeah, and you get stuck up in the stands so far away, and the angle's not right. You can't, and people walk up. You always
Especially if you can't see the head box.
You can't see the head box very good. And you're always having to tell people to move back. And, but I think that's the best spot. And then I'd have to say on the opposite side, on the hillside, about halfway down.
So you kind of like the side to side.
Yes.
Instead of like behind the box or in front of the box,
right.
The side to side angles.
Like as far as watching the head horses, I like seeing them come straight on too.
Yeah.
Because you get to see the move, right? And how much shoulder they're using, how much keeping that shoulder up.
Because that's my favorite view is when you and I got to watch last year, I think the short round of the head.
Yes.
And it was so fun to pick your brain and talk about, and you would show me all the little things that like they would judge on. It helped me so much. It's like, all right, this is what I need to do with my horse. But when we were able to see it head on, you could see the score. Right. Now you may not see the gain as far as the speed of the horse, but you could at least see if that sucker was leaning on the way into position. Like if he was trying to steal a ride, if he was leaning out on you, it was a great view of that.
I did like that. Yeah.
You could see how he shaped up the corner, and then you could see his right leg and his hands right there in the finish, where you can almost tell a little bit of if they're straight, if they're kind of the horses, they're getting by it, or if they're able to show it.
Right. And like I think I told you, when you made the short round and I was judging your horse that day.
And you screwed the hell out of me that one day, huh?
I did. I've been waiting to get back at you. After it was over with, I'm like, man, that horse did finish better than I thought. But it was all about the angle. I was at the far end of the arena. You faced, and it didn't look like you faced all the way to the rope. And then I turn my score in, it goes back up, and then they're down. It takes them a little while to get the replay. The replay comes up, and they're videoing from the other angle, where then you can see perfectly you did finish right. So I cost you a point.
I remember you telling me that, and I was no more worried about that. So when I first started going to the futurities, I think it was in 2017, and that's when I was roping with Joseph Harrison, and he drugged me to it. And I had a nice 6-year-old, that cotton horse, a real nice sorrel horse, and I'm still old school, and I'm still AQHA, and where rodeoing's at, and how they were kind of talking about how that, trying to see something, what would they be looking for at the BFI, and still also learning. But I was also still a little bit hard-headed on it, and I was wanting to win. That's when either won or you didn't, and things were either good or they weren't. And when I was watching legs beat me, I was getting frustrated, and I was even told Jay a little bit frustration, like right there, like how did a leg beat me? Because you're so used to competition. If you rope a leg, you beat him. Oh. And he's like, well, he roped a leg, but it only cost him so much because it was a healer's fault. I said, yeah, but what about the fact that horse dropped right there? That's the reason why that guy that's a number 10 healing roped a leg, right. And but in the same sense though, I started learning more about it and how wrong I was on a lot of the things that you were looking for. And they've also cleaned up a bunch, I think, through as it's evolving.
Yeah, it's made a lot clearer now.
And now when I go to compete, I literally just there because it's fun. Oh. Like I have Joseph healing for me because I love laughing. I love being around that guy. Fun. We laugh. And last year I didn't compete because I didn't have a horse, and so Jackie had one. And she was roping with Joseph, and I said, if you can get through all 4 of them without him roping a leg, I said, you are doing something. and sure enough, I think the 3rd one, he roped a leg for her to be real, real good. And I walked over there, and Joseph's sitting over there with his hat in his hand. I'm sorry, Jack. I'm sorry. And this and that. And I just looked up at Jackie and said, he'll break your heart, won't he? But that's for me, when I get to go there now, I love just being able to be there and being around the best freaking horsemen in the freaking world and the top horses in the world. And it to me, those guys are artists, on how good they are with those horses and what they can get them to do. And I've been a huge fan of the rope horse futurities.
And what this has done, it's made a lot better horsemen.
Oh,
there was guys that kind of rode so-so that's now showing these horses that became better horsemen because of it.
I totally agree.
And there's a lot better horses because of it.
So when you're judging these rope horse futurities, So you like the side-to-side angles. So what are the criteria? What are you voting on? How many things are you voting on, and how do you vote? And how do you judge them? Not voting, but judging. Yeah.
Well, there's 4 maneuvers. The box and the barrier, is the first one.
So the first one is the box and the barrier.
Yeah.
So when the horse rides in the box, what are you looking at, and how do you score that?
I'm looking at how he stays relaxed. He turns in, if he goes back and he back in there and set and stay for just a tick. You don't have to be in there for a minute. I mean, you'd be in there for 5 or 6 seconds or however long to show me that he's standing there. I don't want to just hit the corner and nod. I want him back in there. But if he backs in there is good for 2, 3, 4 seconds or whatever, and you can tell it, man, that's good. And
so what does that score there?
A perfect score, if one does nothing wrong, breaks flat, never moves. And I'm talking about don't turn his head left or right.
Ears perked.
Ears
perked, looking right down between the reins.
Yeah, like he's a stick horse, like he don't move. And breaks flat, does everything perfect. You can give him a 4.
A plus 4.
Plus 4 in that maneuver. There's probably not been.
How many 4s do you think you gave?
A handful I've probably given. Because that's where I'm probably as tough on them as anywhere is the box.
Because in my opinion, what sets up the run, if you're wanting a rodeo, is that start.
That right there. That's the most important. And if they score good, they stay in their hand, they do it. And so, like I said, there's only been probably a handful I've given out of those. And most of them are probably 3 2s and 3s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then
so then after the box, then what is there?
The run and the rate. How much run that horse and then the rate. And that kind of, I'm going to say most of them are in the 2 to 3 range. There's been a few horses. I don't know if I've ever given a 4 in the run. I mean, there might have been 1 or 2 that could just really close the gap there. You could tell that was that much better than the rest of the field.
And then how good they can just melt like a hot knife through butter when they got
just set,
their shoulders up, butt, pedaling their feet.
Yeah. Get a hold right there and not lean with the shoulder. Yeah.
Or shake their head.
You shake their head.
So that's a big one.
Yeah.
I feel like.
You're right. You don't want them shaking their head. Get a hold, stay soft there.
So that's the second one you judge on. And then what's third?
Well, that was the set and the handle of the
steer. So those are combined.
Well, the run and the rate.
The run and the rate.
Yeah. Then the next maneuver is the set and the handle of the steer.
Okay.
How you set that horse gets on.
So you're now we're into the corner and the framing and the setting up the handle.
Then you go to the finish and the face.
So what are you looking for in that corner and how they log the steer?
Just how they use their butt just a little bit. I don't want a big long ass target, just something to use that hind end and get the steer's head where it's tight and smooth around the corner and keep that shoulder up. I don't like one that just leans that shoulder, just really side passes out there and leans that shoulder.
Because that's probably my biggest debate point that I have at the clinics that I do is the big move.
Yes.
Where they run up there, stick and cross, and they got the shoulders pointed out, and their left hand's going to the right, and their right leg is just shoving them ribs and shoulders out. And the biggest fights that I see constantly is, well, this horse is getting strong.
Yeah.
But they're not. They don't realize that that's what they're asking them to do.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get a hold of them.
Yeah. It is.
But that was an old style that I remember. That's been probably my hardest thing to get over is that maneuver right there.
Right.
Trevor almost says he wants them to go around their left leg, not through their left leg.
Right. That's perfect sense. Yeah. Because if you lose control of that shoulder, you've lost control of your horse. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. I've had people tell me, my horse is running off. I said, does he have a really side passing move? Yeah, it's really cool until you can't control it.
Exactly.
And, but then there's the finish in the face. And I like one to keep the rope tight. I don't like to be lost. Like keep it tight and keep moving backwards. Not running back, but just keep it tight, lean into it and looking down it.
Yeah. Because does it matter if they move the hips or the front end?
I want the hips to come around and then move it backwards. I don't want them to get on their butt and then come around.
Right.
Like the AQHA, they're what they face there.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think to me, in my opinion, is, like I said, one of the things that I do love about going to them is the fact that this sets up to me so much of what a number 13 roping down to a 7 now, like there's a blueprint now on how to make a run because that's what you guys are judging. How good your start is, how good your horse runs up there and rates, how good that horse gets his butt right there and sets up the corner and frames across the pin and faces on a tight rope. now you're getting to watch the best guys in the world rope from the same position that basically your 13 ropings down are doing.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm loving about it so much is when I'm able to do as many clinics as I do and then be able to go to the futurities, like God, you talk about sharpening up your axe and getting around the best guys in the world. And it really does. You're always getting something out of it. And that's what's been fun to go to and watch them. But that day when you and I got to sit and watch the short round, and I was able to see through your eyes on what you were looking for, it opened so many windows up of what you guys are looking for, and then also what a guy's training. Because it makes sense to be able to make the runs that a guy's trying to make that are actually realistic runs, like the runs that you would make at the BFI, the runs you'd make at the Spicer Grip, the runs you would make at the World Series Finals in Vegas, and which is a majority of ropers. So, and like I say now, there's getting to be so many guys now that are getting so much better with their horsemanship. And now for a lot of the good jockeys, a lot of a place to go now after rodeo.
Definitely.
That's a big thing now. I talked to Miles Baker after Ardmore, and just after Ardmore, that was the end of April. And I think he'd said he'd won $130,000 that year up to that point.
Wow.
That's more than anybody in the PRCA.
Yeah. No, and there's a lot of guys that's quit rodeoing and just doing this.
Now, is Ren, is he one of them? Is he going straight to Futurian, or is he still rodeoing?
I don't know if he's rodeoing at all right now. I know he has futurities. And, but I think, Joseph, I think he's mostly doing that now. And, Tate, Kirkenslager, that's all he does. And, there's a lot of money in it for those guys.
Is there any different, judging from one futurity to the other of the ones that you're going to, or is it all the same 4 points?
The points are different.
Four angles, excuse me.
Yeah. No, they're all the same 4 maneuvers.
4 maneuvers.
Yep. That we judge it at all of them. And so their point systems are a little bit different at each futurity, but it's basically the same maneuvers we're looking for.
Now, was it the Texas Best, as somebody was telling me about the other day, that they went to, and when they were done, it actually showed the judging from those 4 maneuvers on the big screen?
Yes.
That's pretty handy.
It is really handy.
I would have loved to have known that.
Yes.
When you screwed me at the...
Right. I could have showed you exactly where you messed up or didn't.
I was just so happy. First of all, I made it because, of course, I rode with Joseph, so I was coming in with a leg. So I was just happy I made the dang short round. And I was first out, so I was just and I only had 1 horse. I showed up with 1 horse. And my goal was to beat my wife because she came in, she'd won the intermediate. Yeah. She kicked butt on that 4-year-old. He was a sweet 4-year-old. She had break weight on him at the fraternities that spring on him, and then was headed on him for a month. That's how handy that girl is. It's phenomenal how handy of a head horse trainer that girl is.
I thought you were supposed to say how handy the horse was, and I was going to have to correct you.
Yeah.
She's handy.
You dang right. It is. It's phenomenal what a good jockey and trainer she is.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do both, and she's one of the few that can do both. I've seen a lot of really good jockeys, but they can't train. I've seen a lot of good trainers that can't show them.
Yeah.
And she does both.
Yeah.
And luckily, Joseph roped a leg, I think, in the short round of her, or maybe Mrs. Dalley's, and otherwise she would probably beat me. But I was so pumped that I beat her. But I love the fact that it was everything that I teached was what I was able to do. I freaking nailed the start. I got up there, rope, got it tight, handled him, and what I thought was a good finish was tight and everything, and scored out the roof. For me, I was just tickled because I only had 1 horse. I've been doing all these clinics and hauling cadence around, and that's the only time I had was to ride that 1 horse. What I enjoyed about it was just like the personal victory for me was the fact that out of all those best horses in the world that day, won second in the short round against all the best horses in the world. So it was just fun. It was just fun to be able to see where you're training and where you're holding up with the guys that are the best trainers in the world.
No, and talking about the video that comes out and it shows you what you scored in each maneuver, I love that. And so the guys, they get it right to their phone right then. And so after it's over with, they come show you, hey, why did you mark me this? Why did you mark me that? And you can watch it with them and show them why you did and help them understand and help me understand too. Did I mess up there? Because I'm willing to admit my mistakes. I did to you.
Oh, yeah. I remember I didn't even know it. Like I said, I was just so excited. My horse, he just felt so good. And
I think that's a neat
it was
deal
fun.
they do now with that. I like that too.
Yeah, because I don't even look and see who the judges are. I have no idea. Right. To me, like, they've got it figured out more than I do. And I'm one of the guys that hardly ever ask any questions. Like, I'll talk to Trevor and a few guys like, hey, what do you see here that I need to do to kind of keep up with it? And so, like I said, that's my outlet. Right. You know, that's what I enjoy getting to do. And that's the culture I love hanging out. I love those guys, man. They are so cool. Like, they're all rooting for one another. And, you know, it's such a tight-knit community and culture right there. And gosh dang, what those guys can do with them horses is so much fun to watch.
And those young horses. That's what 4-year-olds that are looking outstanding.
That Tate Kirkenslogger has got some phenomenal 4-year-olds and Miles.
They really do.
And Joseph has been kicking their butt on that Air Force One.
Right.
His head is awesome. He's been real fun to watch. Now, his face is a tick different than Trevor and Miles. But the scoring, that it all still stays the same. It stays tight and moves and scores. But
that's why people call me and say, hey, would you take this horse to futurity? I'm like, no, I'm not your guy, because I can't get them ready that fast. And probably not. You know, our program here is a little bit slower than most. But, you know, I want that horse to be good for a long time. And I feel like if I have one at 4, I mean, I just can't. I don't feel like I can do it.
Yeah,
just going that.
I'm 100% with you.
Yeah,
I found out through futurity, and I know a little bit about a 6-year-old. I know very little about a 5-year-old. Absolutely nothing about a 3 and 4-year-old. Mm-hmm. In the fact that I know that I don't know, because I know that they're such babies. And for me, coming from full time rodeo and roping on horses that were some of the best athletes in the world at a high level that knew their job, and to be able to, you know, go back to that mindset of, you know, knowing, okay, what are you dealing with at this mind and maturity level, and also the fact you're still growing and all that stuff. And it's one of those things like this not appeal to me yet. Right. The 5 and 6-year-olds are probably more my jam, in the fact that I can understand a little bit more of where they're at mature wise, because like, to me, where I'm at in my program, which is 1 a year,
right?
You know, is I want to have something that's going to be there for longevity. The last thing I want to do is take them as so young, and then every time they get to the pressure that is free, you know. Right. And to me, that's where my training, or at my level of training, was I didn't have them prepared well enough at that age. So I was more attracted to the 5 and 6-year-olds.
Well, that's where I'm at too. I don't feel like I can have one at 4 ready. And my wife, she's like, you need to take this horse for futurity. You need to do this. And I just don't want to push them that soon.
Yeah. But that's kind of where I'm at too. And for one, my knowledge is not quite there yet. And 2, the one thing I found out too last year, because I've been going over almost 40 to over 40 clinics a year. And so for some of those weeks, I'll be doing, you know, like there was one week I did 3 clinics in 1 week. Mm-hmm. Well, those horses can't go that long without getting rode.
Right. You
know, what I found out 3 and 4, and sometimes even the 5-year-olds, they can't be rode 2 days a week, 1 day a week, have 2 weeks off, come back. You know, it's too inconsistent for me to be able to get them. Now, a 6-year-old that's already been through the program, and, you know, they don't need road every day. So it's a little bit easier there. But on the training process, they need a lot more consistency than what I was able to do. That's what I found out. I don't know as much about a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old because I don't have the time for it as well. But yeah, I've seen some. I tell you what's been fun to watch too is like when you get guys like Cody Snow, you get guys like Clay Smith, Driggers on those horses that have been trained, and you get to see what a good jockey can make those horses look like. It's almost like the race horses. You get to see what a jockey can do with a good horse, and it is those guys right there. I think I was there when Cody Snow kicked butt on that buckskin horse that I think he just bought it from Billy Jack over there at Ardmore, and that horse looked sweet. But every time you watch Cody Snow ride one, they all look good.
Good. He does.
He's a heck of a jockey. He's a heck of a jockey. Same way with Driggers. I've watched Driggers ride some stuff. I remember one time he came and tried a horse of mine that wasn't very good, and I knew he wasn't very good. And said, look, if you know someone that can ride him, he was an ex-bulldogging horse. I thought I could make him work. It's a little strong. He rode him, and if I would have been there and didn't know the horse, I'd have bought him. That's how good he rode him. Like, I've never seen that horse look that good.
And how much is his roping changed in the way he rides too? Wow.
You know, he was almost a Dustin Esquiza at one point in time.
Yes.
And now he's one of the few guys now that's just knocks him out with consistency. He can still be fast, but he's also consistently fast because of how good he rides and can ride anything.
Yeah. And then once he reaches, he keeps some horses' shoulder up, forward, just does a great job.
Yeah, he sets up that corner so good. There's no stick and cross. He moves them out, picks them up, and they're able to stay up through the logging as they're logging that steer, pulling that steer so they can finish.
Yep.
Instead of when they get bogged down in the corner, then they can't get back up enough to finish.
Right.
And it kills the momentum of the run. Yeah, it's been fun to watch. What about the heeling? What's some of the things that you score on the heel side?
And it's basically the same, the box, the run, the rate, the corner. And the main thing is in the stop and the finish. The main thing is, the position around the corner is what I look for. They're not on top of them or not having to chase them. They're riding that perfect position around there, good distance all the way where they can rope first, second, third hop. It doesn't matter. That horse is still moving forward and they're not having to pull off of them there. And when they stop, I like them horses to stay with all the way to the bottom of the delivery and they can drag it. And I don't want them running backwards, but just hold it,
So one of the things that, like for me, the questions that I have is like on the heel side, to where when they're able to rope first, second hop, like are they almost blocking them off and be able to rope them kind of on the way there a little bit? Or is there a difference when one has to work and ride the third, fourth, or fifth hop to almost look like they're able to work better? Or do you feel like you can judge the same with them able to almost rope first, second hop?
Right. I could probably judge the same just watching the horse. The main thing, I want those horses to get to the inside and not so straight behind after stepping by a little bit. Some of those horses, young like that, they'll want to step by just a tick. It seems like I've seen that happen. And the guys rope them.
Right.
And that's what you can't pay attention to the rope. You got to pay attention to the horse. And that's what one
because there's some playmakers back there.
Yeah. I mean, they're so talented. And that's what one time at a steer was bad. And Dakota rode over and says, "Hey, did I get another steer?" I said, "Man, I wasn't watching the steer, Dakota. I was watching your horse. But if you want me to judge the steer, I will too." He's like, "No, I understand."
That's a tough. Yeah,
it is tough because I'm watching the horse.
It's a tough focus point.
Yeah, I'm not paying attention to the steer, and I want to watch the horse. I mean, I'm watching his feet come around. I'm watching the distance, and you could see something happen with the steer.
Because another thing you explained to me on the stop when we were watching that short round too is like they can't just slide.
Yeah.
Like there has to be a point where they got to shut it down.
They got to finish the run.
They got the run. Their front feet have to stop just a little bit to make sure that they can take the jerk right.
Right. You slide too far. To me, that takes time. And they're still moving forward. They hadn't stopped the run yet.
And that'll kill you in any jackpot or rodeo because that takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though it's pretty.
Right. Oh, it is pretty. There ain't nothing pretty.
But you have to, this is a timed event as well as a judged event. Yep. That's why I do like the time and the fact that
I do too. Yeah.
It does kind of even it out a little bit. The ones that are just timed, gosh dang it. It's just like there's one that I've watched. It's they're 4-year-olds in February.
Yeah.
And you're blowing them up.
Right.
Like it's a jackpot on a 4-year-old. And what's the longevity of that horse after that?
Oh,
like nothing. Like you just put such a scarring memory in him of what it's like to go to a jackpot. And I mean, I've even watched some of the ones that have won it in the breakaway and calf rope. And it's like, they won it, but like,
well, they're throwing and jerking in the breakaway.
They're rare over backwards and just golly, it's like, but it's all time.
Yeah,
it's all in time. And so, to me, it's a good balance. Like I said, not to discredit anything. That's the last thing I want to do. But as far as golly, that says tough on horses. You want this to be where there's longevity in them horses as well. You don't want to just in and out.
Be about the horse.
Yeah,
that's what I think it is.
Absolutely
about the horse. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, man, it's been really fun to sit here and talk about. Well, for one, it's fun to catch up and then talk about the old days, and because, like I said, the amount of guys that if you would have taken them now and they just bought their cards and you throw them back in the 90s and just the old Dodges, the 5 speeds, stick shifts, all that stuff. It'd be fun to see how much they could handle finding a Rand McNally map. Using the clutch, braking, shifting gears, trying to figure it out where they're going.
Well, I feel pretty confident saying this, that there's probably not a kid out there today that wanted it as much as I did then to get in the rig with Casey Jones his wife, 3 kids, and a Dodge pickup and a Capri camper and a bumper pull trailer in rodeo. Yeah.
100.
Oh,
100 rodeos.
yes. And I won so much with that guy, but every time I got somewhere, I was ready for a break. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Well, you got to the rodeo and you couldn't get within 30 foot of a rig because he roped calves and he shod horses. And so I had one little tack room and we drug everything out, every rodeo, and scattered out around us. And
because back then he didn't make enough money to just win.
Right.
There's a lot of other things the guy had to do with a lot of guys. I remember the Moore brothers from California.
Yes.
They would, I think if I remember right, they had outside horses with them as they were rodeoing. And then West shod horses. And that's how I made it,
Yeah. No, it helped a lot of people. But to get in there, it was tough. I ain't going to lie.
Yeah.
And like I said, every time I got somewhere, I saw somebody. I'd see Charles Pogue a lot. I say, we'd go get a room together. I got to get away because I'm sleeping in the top bunk with the boy, and I would sleep up top.
Yeah.
Casey and his wife was on the bottom bunk, and the 2 little girls made a pallet on the floor. And it's real handy to get up in the morning and have to crawl over everybody to go feed the horse.
So after a while, you might just jump on your Harley and
Yeah.
not even have any clothes on and just so you can go get away.
Just might do that.
Was that one of those times, or was that a different time?
That's a different
time.
Different time. I might have been college rodeoing then.
Was it a Harley?
I think so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. It was, well, in Texas, it's hot.
It is hot.
So
need a lot of clothes around here.
The humidity. Yeah. Every once in a while, there's only one way to keep from having to go to. And especially like back then, rodeoing. You're trying to keep from having as many trips to the laundromat as possible.
Right. We're telling stories. I'll tell you one that a lot of people like to hear is talking about drinking maybe a little bit at Pendleton in the Letterbuck room, and we'd had a few whiskeys, and for some reason, I thought it'd be a good idea to slap Steve Duhan.
Golly, that's a lot of whiskeys.
That's a lot of whiskeys. And so he said, Stewie, quit that. I'd slap him. Stewie, quit that. Mike Smith said, Stewie, I'd quit that if I was you. And heck with him. And so Steve and I were friends, thank God. And anyway, I slapped him about 3 times. He finally just reaches down, picks me up, bites my ear, and lets me go. And there's just blood just rolling down. And I'm hanging from his mouth. And Mike's over, I told you how to quit that, Stewie.
Those were 2 men.
Oh, man. And that's what we had.
Those were both Louisiana boys, too, wasn't
it? Yeah.
And didn't they both play for Louisiana?
I believe they
were both
ball.
LSU.
They were
football.
Football, yeah.
Camaro's LSU, not Mike Smith. He was a cool dude, too, but
Man, yeah.
Both of them, yeah. The Bulldoggers were the most fun.
Oh, they were fun.
Loved them. That Pendleton was some of the best people watching.
Oh, man.
Yeah, how wild that Letterbuck room was back in the day. I mean, there's a reason why those signs say no indecent exposure.
Yes, because there was.
A lot of it. Yeah, it was wild. It was the Wild West.
Everybody let off a little steam as getting that time.
Well, and that was the time of year there was so much steam.
Yeah.
I've always, in my opinion, you know more about it than I do because you were there before I was, but Reno, in my opinion, was always the funnest rodeo of the year because everyone was about to win everything.
Yeah.
Everybody's expectations were high. It was so much fun. You come from Texas and it's nice and cool weather and the BFI. And yeah, it was so much fun at Reno. And then Pendleton, either in, you're out, or you're freaking stressed out on the bubble.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And then everyone went on Tuesday after slack to the Letterbuck room for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 hours.
Right.
And then they kick you out at 6 o'clock in the evening. And you felt like you had been there so long that you thought it was midnight, and you walk outside and the sun's still up.
Yeah.
Like a vampire.
Exactly.
Yeah, that place was wild.
That's a fun place.
Yeah. It's still one of my favorite rodeos. I love that rodeo.
No, I didn't love coming off the hill. I ain't going to lie. I was puckered up every time.
Really?
Well, now it's not as bad. They changed it, put them grandstands. It's not near the hill like it was.
Right. That's true.
Steep,
yeah.
And it's leveled out a little bit. And, but man, I'll come across there puckered up. Yeah. The whole time.
I grew up there. And so I loved
used
it.
To it. Yeah,
I loved it.
Yeah.
Now, Joseph, I drug him there and he was like, I do not want to go, Chuck. I don't want to go to Pendleton. I don't want to go. I'm like, toughen up.
Right.
We're going. So he entered, and he did not like it. He didn't like any of it. And I see why.
Yeah.
His horses did stop with a lot of slide, and I seen it.
I turned out a couple of times. I didn't need to go. I said, man, let's head home.
Yeah.
And just a couple, but I went.
Well, and I'd seen why too.
times.
Like Driggers, he broke his leg.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, we even lost one. Mike Booth he
there.
Died
He did.
there heading.
Yeah.
One of the few times you could ever die heading, and it was at Pendleton.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get the of what could happen there for sure. But man, the adrenaline is probably the most adrenaline of any place I've ever been, other than the NFR. But yeah, and especially if it rains.
Oh man,
when it rains, it is a real tough one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's some of the funnest times right there. But man, I've always enjoyed you ever since I was a little kid. You was always one of the guys out there that was always real nice. He was nice to everybody, and he was one of the funnest cats out there, and one of the nicest guys. He was one of the guys because it was a little cutthroat back at a certain era, and
right.
And you was one of the guys that never was that way. He was one of the nicest guys out there, and it was always fun to know you and fun to get to sit and chat and talk of what it was like back then, because he was one of my heroes growing up.
Yes, it was fun. I had a blast rodeoing. I did. I enjoyed every bit of it. When people ask me, "Do you miss it?" I said, "I sure do." Those 10 days I miss. I miss those 10 days in December.
Yeah,
I ain't gonna lie, but it was time. My boy, he's getting ready to start school. And
you quit, and it seemed like it was easy for you too.
It was pretty easy. I was pretty content with it.
When you retired.
Yeah, like I said, I wanted to be here to take my boy to school every day, because I heard a story. Ricky Green told me one time about Denny Watkins. He went home to his boy. He rodeoed the whole time his boy was in school, and he went to ask. He says, "Hey, Justin, let's go do this." He goes, "No, me and Mom are going to go do this, and me and Mom was going to do that." Well, he didn't have the relationship with his son. I said, "You know what? I don't want that, really." And I'm sure that Denny has a great relationship with his son, but they weren't at that
time.
point.
That's a hard time, yeah.
Yeah, it was a hard time. And because he was rodeoing. I said, I don't want to do that. And so I said, you know what? I've only got 1 or 2 years I could rodeo, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm good now. I'm going to quit, come home, and take him to school every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I take my daughter to school every day now. And that's kind of our time in the morning, And but so I don't have any regrets there at all. I enjoy what I do now. I get to do everything right here at the house. I don't have to go anywhere. Yeah, just like today, I hadn't even left the place today.
Yeah,
and I may not leave tomorrow. I'm happy right here. Yeah,
yeah. That was my deal too. Was when Creed and Cadence, Creed and Journey, when it was kind of Jackie's time, like when it was time for me to stop, and it was in a good spot where Cadence was needing to get hauled around and go to some of the stuff, and where Jackie was going to rodeo. It was one of those things that fell in my lap in 2020 where it was an easy choice for me.
Right.
And one of the things I remember guys like Dan Green, that guy I respected, he was like, I'm going to go home and raise my kids. And, we just got done with Father's Day, last weekend. And so to be able to talk about some of the guys, Speedy, he was at home, once he was done, kids were in school, he was all in. He'd rope with them kids every day. Coulter Todd, when his kids hit a certain point, it was time to be a dad. And that's such a respectable thing that I remembered about some of those guys out there. And that's it's a lot too, being a dad. It's a responsibility, and it can get overlooked out here when you're out here. Cause I tell you what took me so long to get over once I was rodeoing was just get over that selfishness, because if you weren't tending to it, it wasn't getting done. And so you had to practice, you had to do all this stuff, you had to enter, you had to get the trades, you had to make sure the rig was running and then before long you look up and it's the end of the day. And it's hard to do that and be present and be a dad.
That was when I decided to quit. I really didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to be home.
Yeah.
And about the first, I don't know how many months, you may say years, but first 2 or 3 months, Amber's like, you need to go do something. You need to get out of here. You're driving me nuts. She was ready for me to go back to rodeoing. Because she was already been home and she had her own routine.
Yeah, and you messed it up.
Tegan, and I messed up the routine every day.
Yeah, so now that I'm home and when Jackie comes home, that's what I feel like.
Yeah.
Like, when are you going back to rodeo again? Like, I had the place clean. I had a structure, and now you just tearing all. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then I would do the same when I was rodeo and I come back. I just mess everything. It's crazy because it's a reconnect and getting back into a routine as a couple again.
Right.
There's a lot to it.
No, it's so.
So how do we get a hold of you? So, you have, what'd you say, 600 and some lessons last year? That we said?
Yeah.
So if a guy, because you do a good job with your teaching and your coaching and especially your judging. And, I would say that with what you watching through your lens the other day or last year, watching the rope horse futurity, it has to be so good when you're able to watch that top level and then be able to watch someone else's run, as guys are trying to get better at it. So, you said you ride a few outside horses and do a few lessons.
Yeah. I keep 6 outside horses.
So how does a guy get a hold of you?
The easiest way, just call me.
I'm old school. I don't want to get your number over the podcast. But
anybody can call. I don't care.
Heck, I'll talk to anybody.
I will. Why would I?
I love it.
Either I'll answer or I won't. I mean, it's easy. But no, if you do call, you got to leave a message.
You got to make sure you're not spam.
Well, that and I got it set up where it doesn't. If you're not in my contacts, it doesn't ring.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because you get all the spam calls, and so just text me or leave a message, and that's the easiest way.
Heck yeah, you want to
have that phone with.
You want to throw your number out on the podcast?
I'll do it. 817-307-7303.
I love that era, and we're one of the few guys that could probably repeat Procom's phone number at the same time.
we could do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is good.
Oh man, good luck with the judging. I know where are you heading next? You got a few of them coming up.
I do have a few of them. I've got the 5th, 6th, and 7th of July in Fort Worth, and then I go to the end of July. I go to Utah. I do that one up there.
Now, what is that one?
One that the Richards are putting on.
So, what's it called?
You know what? I don't know what they're
called. It's
American Rope Horse Futurities helping
okay.
with the Jay's helping them with that. I know that. They're helping them do that.
And so it'll probably be on their website to be able to watch it.
Yes, it will be. And then I come back and I'll do the one in October in Fort Worth, the big one there. And you get to see a lot of horses then. I think year before last I did that one and I think I've seen over 900 something runs.
That's a lot.
3 days.
Yeah.
They've added a day to it.
That has helped a lot, huh?
Yeah, it has.
Kind of space it out. Well, good. I'm glad I entered the one in Fort Worth, and so I'll be excited to get some films of it and be able to break it down with you because that'll be the second one, and that's one we raised. I don't know how showy he is, but he's got some run blood in him, and he's like I said, he doesn't move his feet like a cow horse.
Right.
But I think in the longevity of it, I think it's gonna be a nice horse. Nice. It's just a matter of putting that eye appealing moves in him and stuff like that. But awesome. Well, thanks for your time, man. Thanks for doing the podcast. I learned a lot. It was fun to learn a lot of the judging and stuff like that of what everyone's, because that's one of the biggest questions I have at a lot of the clinics that I go to is how do they judge it?
Right.
And
so guys ask me every day down there, how do you judge it? How do you do it?
It's so hard to put that into words. It's easier to kind of talk about it and kind of feel it out as opposed to, reading about it for sure. So, well, thanks for your time, man. It was good to catch up with you again.
You bet. You too.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.